Hey guys, thanks for joining us for the April newsletter. Summer is almost here. We hope everyone had a great Easter and you were able to catch the eclipse a couple of weeks ago. This month, we were talking about some changes to the out-of-service criteria, MC numbers are going away, some tips on shifting a manual transmission in trucks, and the silent killer, stress. All right, let's go. What was that? Where am I? Something just touched my leg. What the heck? Oh, there you are. Hey guys, did y'all know that as a trucker, if your lights are not on at night, it is not an out-of-service violation anymore? Well, that's better. Well, it's true. As a trucker, it's a good thing for you because since they're removing that from the out-of-service criteria, you won't be put out of service if you just happen to forget to turn your lights on. But just know that you can still be ticketed based on state laws if you are driving at night without lights. So I'm sure you all know about the out-of-service criteria that we're talking about. It's actually called the North American Standard Out-of-Service Criteria, or OOSC, which is a pass-fail criteria for inspections. They're used to identify critical violations for drivers, their vehicles, and/or cargo. Getting these critical violations in a roadside inspection can place them out of service. So why am I rambling on about this? Well, as of April 1st, 2024, the CVSA implemented 11 changes to the out-of-service criteria, some more significant than others. You can review these in more detail in the article below, but I'll try and sum them up for you. So we already talked about the first one. They're clarifying the criteria for lighting devices. Simply not being on does not lead to an out-of-service violation. The lights would have to be broken and not usable. Number 2, they added a note regarding operational lighting. If it works but does not meet other requirements like height, position, or lens color, it's considered a violation, but the vehicle should not be put out of service. Number 3, for commercial driver's licenses with a hazmat endorsement, they added a note that will clarify the hazmat endorsement status when the driver's TSA screening or hazmat determination is expired. Number 4, for driver physicals and medical requirements in Ontario, they have removed Class D from the notes because the renewal of the medical certification is now required and incorporated into the Class D license itself. Number 5 and 6, for those with a commercial driver's license or learner's permit, they added the new 392.15 violation code, which says that drivers are prohibited from performing safety-sensitive functions if they have a drug and alcohol program violation. If you have any questions right now about these changes or are concerned about a roadside violation you got, you can always contact us by email, phone, or the form below, and a DOT compliance specialist can help you out. Okay, number 7 and 8. Missing camshaft bushings was added to the 20% criterion, and they have also added watermarks to better identify the 20% out-of-service criterion, as well as the 20% criterion relative to steering axle brakes. If you're wondering what the 20% criterion is, it basically says that if 20% of a vehicle and/or trailer's service brakes are defective, then the vehicle should be considered out of service. Number 9, in the performance-based brake test section, they changed the wording related to retest from shall to may. Basically, this allows the retesting of the vehicle to be at the inspector's discretion. Number 10, the part referring to coupling items was amended to add latches that are not in use and ball hitches that are mismatched with the receiver. And 11, they made some changes to the language for tire violations. More specifically, tires that are equipped with the automatic tire inflation systems, or ATIS. Basically, the OOSC will differentiate between leaks in the tread area of a tire equipped with ATIS versus a tire without ATIS. If the tire pressure is 50% or less than the maximum inflation, the vehicle will be placed out of service. They have also noted that ATIS-equipped vehicles will be allowed to travel to a safe location, which will help reduce other roadside incidents. If you have recently received a violation, you pretty much have 60 days to fix it. If you have questions, just fill out the form below, email or call us, and one of our DOT safety rating specialists will explain more about our safety rating upgrade service, and we can get you back on the right track. Let's talk a little bit about stress. You know how you're going about your day all normal and someone comes up and asks you for something, and then another, and then another, and then the phone rings. You get a text, Matt, I need you here now. You get an instant message, can you help with this? Your phone dings, look at these photos. Facebook pops up, memories. Holy crap, that was 10 years ago. Oh my God, my life is flying by. Where did all the time go? What have I been doing? What is this all for? Ah! Well, if that didn't stress you out, I don't know what will. And maybe that's a slight exaggeration, but it may not be for some people. Everyone deals with stress on a daily basis. Some people deal with it better than others, and there are certain jobs that are more prone to it than others. I bet you didn't expect truck driving to be on that list though. Let's see what our very own Tim Miller has to say about it. That's right, I didn't stutter. There's a new sheriff in town, and they call him Timbo. So let's get in the know with Timbo. So truck driving is often overlooked as a high-stress job, but there are recent studies showing that nearly 75% of truck drivers find their jobs physically and emotionally stressful. A 2012 study found that many truckers miss out on quality time with loved ones, spend little time at home, rely on unhealthy eating habits, and struggle with sleep deprivation. Stress is a silent killer. It's often neglected, and despite these challenges, the trucking industry lacks adequate support systems for drivers to manage their stress. It can lead to serious health issues and coping mechanisms like substance abuse that will only make it worse. And due to the lack of support for mental health in the trucking industry, it only perpetuates the problem because drivers fear being judged or that there will be consequences if they voice their concerns. There's most definitely a need in the trucking industry to provide mental health counseling and social support to address these issues, and there are some things that the FMCSA could do. While current FMCSA regulations ensure work-life balance during driving hours, there are no provisions for mental and physical health outside of fitness testing. To mitigate stress and promote overall well-being, the FMCSA could and should implement proactive measures such as identifying stressors, incentivizing stress management, and educating drivers on healthy habits. Tim went into a lot more detail in his article, but ultimately the goal is to create an industry where drivers feel comfortable with addressing any stress triggers, providing access to proper support and resources, and maintaining a healthy work-life balance. By prioritizing mental health, the trucking industry can ensure the longevity and success of workers while promoting safety on the roads. If you have any questions or concerns or are looking to minimize your workload as the owner of a trucking company, give us a call, email us, or fill out the form below, and one of our DOT compliance specialists can walk you through what our DOT compliance programs can do for you. Do you remember a while ago when we were first talking about the California AB5 law?
Remember TIE Fighters? Oh, remember Jawas? Maybe? Hey, remember Jurassic Park? Oh, you love Jurassic.
Basically, AB5 is a California state law that would make it much more difficult for employers to classify workers as contractors instead of employees. Determining their working status would be done using a new test called the ABC test. Ultimately, this could affect around 70,000 owner-operators throughout the state. If you don't remember all of this, we will throw that link above to that original video in case you want more details. Well, after fighting with 4 separate claims to get this law denied, unfortunately on Friday, March 29, 2024, California District Judge Roger Benitez denied the California Trucking Association's and OOIDA's latest request for injunction. This means that there will be no relief to truckers from AB5 as OOIDA and CTA appeal the ruling. If you have any questions or concerns about how the AB5 law will affect you as a trucker, you can talk to one of our specialists by calling, emailing, or filling out the form below. CTA and OOIDA approached the injunctions 4 times and in 4 different ways. Let's do a quick overview of these 4 injunctions. First, they stated that the Federal Aviation Administration Authorization Act, or F4A, preempted AB5. The F4A is an act that forbids states from enforcing a law related to the price, route, or service of any motor carrier. Benitez denied this injunction based on the court's previous ruling that AB5 is not significantly related to rates, routes, or services, and therefore isn't preempted by the F4A. In the second injunction, they said there was an implied preemption because AB5 creates a patchwork quilt of national regulations to classify truck drivers for purposes of wage and hour protection. Benitez disagreed and denied this as well, saying that the particular regulations Congress is concerned about are those addressing a carrier's price, route, and service, not wages and hours. The third injunction claimed that AB 5 is a violation of the Dormant Commerce Clause of the U.S. Constitution, which basically says that states cannot pass laws that regulate interstate commerce. Benitez denied it, saying that CTA and OOIDA argued that AB 5's burden on interstate commerce outweighs the local benefits, and although AB 5 does have economic effects, the effects don't confirm a purposeful discrimination against interstate commerce. Lastly, they claim that AB 5 violated the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution, claiming that employee classifications were targeted at carriers and owner-operators, were not impartial, and were based on comments by the AB 5 legislative sponsor, Lorena Gonzalez. Again, Benitez denied the injunction, saying that the statements of the one legislator doesn't necessarily motivate other legislators to vote on passing the bill into law. So if AB 5 does not include a trucking exemption, then there will be a flood of independent carriers going through a new hire process, and there are a lot of rules around this process. We do offer a new hire service where all driver files are managed properly and in compliance with the DOT. This single service is also offered as part of our DOT compliance programs. If you're interested, talk to one of our DOT compliance specialists by calling, emailing, or filling out the form below, and we'd be happy to help you. So, how many FMCSA employees does it take to change a light bulb? Give up? Around 1,000. One person to change the light bulb and 999 others to talk about the best way to do it. Well, maybe that's why it takes so long for things to be implemented over at the FMCSA. So what am I actually talking about? Well, the FMCSA wants to completely overhaul its verification process for truckers and improve the customer experience. And that includes ending MC numbers. The idea of ending MC numbers has been on the trucking industry's mind since August 2013, when the FMCSA passed a final rule to establish the URS, which stands for the Unified Registration System. It was expected that docket numbers, including MC, MX, and FF numbers, would be discontinued on October 1st, 2023. So we're at about 10 or 11 years for this one, but we're glad they're trying to make things easier. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out by filling out the form below. So what does this mean for the trucking industry? First of all, why do they want to get rid of MC numbers? Well, their goal is to reduce paperwork and create a single clearinghouse for information on motor carriers, brokers, and freight forwarders, and use DOT numbers as the sole identifier. Currently, a company's authority is attached to the MC number, but after the launch of URS, the authority registrations will be tied to the company's DOT number, along with safety data, which means that brokers and shippers can track a single number instead of two separate numbers when they're trying to vet carriers. By going down to one identification number, the FMCSA also believes that it will help identify, control, and stop chameleon carriers. A chameleon carrier is a pretty common concept, unfortunately. And it happens when a carrier is shut down for safety violations and then opens back up as a new company, but under a different MC number. Another question of concern is, are DOT numbers transferable? Well, no. DOT numbers are not transferable, but MC numbers are. The reason for this is that DOT numbers are a unique identifier to track the safety history of a specific carrier. If you transfer a DOT number, you would technically be transferring the entire safety history of one entity to a totally separate entity. When considering a merger or acquisition, if a new legal entity is created, a new DOT number will be required. And the biggest question on everyone's mind is, when do they expect this to actually happen? Well, at the 2024 Mid-Atlantic Truck Show, or MATS, the FMCSA outlined the proposed changes to overhaul the registration system and said that they expect it to be live by October 1st, 2025. They even had a mock-up of the new website at MATS, and there was a brief demo on how the system works. Okay, so October 2025, we are holding you to that, starting the countdown now. If you want to monitor the countdown, or you're starting a trucking company, acquiring one, or just unsure of what steps you need to take, give us a call, email us, or fill out the form below. We offer DOT compliance programs that take care of the entire process for you and keep your trucking company fully compliant. Okay, let's spell this out. C-A-P-T-I-V-E. Captive. Must be French or something. Wait, what's that? Oh, that's not it? Oh, I'm sorry. Captive. Captive. Okay, that makes more sense. So we're not talking about being trapped or say captured by a bunch of pirates or something cool like that. No, that would be way too much fun. We're actually talking about insurance. Yeah. So basically, captive insurance is an insurance company owned and controlled by its insureds, and the risk associated with your coverage is shared by each captive participant. Assuming the risk is low for everyone in the captive, which would be the goal, your insurance rates would be much more affordable. So the idea of a captive can apply in a lot of industries, but of course we are talking about the trucking industry and commercial truck insurance. So did you know that the top 50% of carriers are in a captive insurance group or self-insured? What does that mean? Well, it means that if you aren't in a captive, you are shopping for insurance premiums among the least safe fleets in your market, and that will ultimately make your rates more expensive. So, I'm sure you're shaking your computer screen and yelling, "Matt, help me, sign me up now!" Well, slow down for a second. You can't just jump into a captive and get low rates if you have violations and terrible CSA scores. You actually need a good safety record to be considered. So a captive is a good choice for carriers that have a good safety record but are still seeing their insurance premiums go up. But wait, Matt, are there different types of captives, or is it just a one-size-fits-all kind of thing? Well, I'm glad you asked. There are actually two common types of captive models, a pure captive and a group captive. A pure captive, also known as a single parent captive, is more common with large companies that have a big fleet and a lot of money. These larger companies are usually able to cover the cost of any claim out of pocket. On the other hand, a group captive is common for smaller and medium-sized fleets. This type of captive is exactly like it sounds. It's a group of companies who are shareholders of the captive itself. The simplest explanation of it is the shareholders buy the insurance policies and their collective risk determines the premiums. So if you think you qualify or are interested in becoming part of an insurance captive, give us a call, email us, or fill out the form below, and we can do a quick analysis of your company. If you aren't quite convinced yet, let's talk about some of the benefits. One of the main ones, of course, is saving you money on your premiums. One of the fastest growing costs for trucking companies in recent years has been insurance. And although an individual company can get their insurance rates down on their own, it does take time. So having a dynamic group that all contribute to the same cause can speed that process up quite a bit. We will throw all of the other benefits on screen, but a few others outside of the premiums include better insurance terms, more control over handling claims, ability to retain profits from good performance, improved cash flow, and more. It can also improve your fleet safety. With a group dynamic looking to stay as safe as possible and reduce claims, there will be encouragement and advice on how to roll out safety programs. This will come from the better performing fleets with an overall goal of lowering the risk of the individual profiles of each owner, which ultimately affects the entire group. When considering whether you qualify, look at your fleet size. On average, safe carriers with around 30+ units may find it financially helpful to join a group captive, whereas smaller companies may not have enough premium volume to make it worthwhile. That premium volume would have to be at least $250,000 in premiums. This means that most carriers would need to be in business for 5 years or more to show that they have a good safety history and that their loss ratios are 35% or less. Are you interested in exploring captive insurance options for your business? Just talk to one of our commercial truck insurance specialists. They will do a quick assessment of your risk profile, discuss your insurance goals, and outline a strategy to help you maximize your captive benefits. Just give us a call, email us, or fill out the form below, and we can help you out. Man, I don't know about you, but when it comes to transmissions, I'm old school. I won't drive anything but a manual. It's just more fun, and I feel so much more connected to the car. But these days, you'd be lucky if you can find a young person that even knows what a manual transmission is. I'm sure you've heard those stories of thieves trying to steal a car and having no idea how to drive it because it's a stick shift. What a lowlife, right? I mean, if that's your profession, at least learn your product, right? Well, I guess the bright side is, if you own a stick shift, it's probably the best theft deterrent there is. Okay, enough of me rambling. What are we actually talking about today? For new truckers, we're gonna go over a few tips to master shifting a manual transmission in a semi-truck. We'll talk about shifting up, shifting down, and double clutching or floating gears. But first, let's talk about how manual transmissions actually work. The overall function of a manual transmission is the same as an automatic. It transfers power from the engine to the wheels. The main difference is you have full control over your shifts and what gear you want the truck to be in. If you haven't ever driven a manual vehicle, it's unlikely you have even thought about this, but with a manual transmission, you are controlling everything with the clutch pedal and your gear shift. You know that weird third pedal on the floorboard of your dad's car that, just like those thieves, basically prevented you from taking the car for a joyride when you were 15? No, that is not a second brake, it's a clutch pedal. The actual clutch itself is mounted between the transmission and the engine block, but the pedal is what allows you to engage or disengage it. When the clutch pedal is pressed down, the clutch disengages, separating the engine's power from the transmission. So every time you want to go into a new gear, first to second, to third, and so on, you need to press the clutch pedal in and then shift. Those are the basics, and if you haven't ever driven a manual car, don't worry, you are probably in a better position than those who have, just because driving a manual semi-truck is a lot different. If you have questions or concerns, one of our CDL instructors would be happy to help. Just call, email, or fill out the form below, and we'd be happy to help you out. One major difference between a manual road car and a truck is the existence of a clutch brake. Some of you are probably thinking, clutch brake? A clutch does not have a brake. Well, it does in a semi-truck. And you will engage it by pushing the clutch pedal all the way to the floor, which is an extremely important point because the only time it's necessary to have the clutch brake engaged is when you're moving from a dead stop. So you don't ever use the clutch brake while the truck is rolling. Doing that will burn out the clutch much faster, not to mention burn a hole in your pocket. On a semi-truck, when the vehicle is moving, you should really only be pushing the clutch pedal down about half to 3/4 of the way every time you shift. Mastering gear shifts takes practice, so don't worry if you don't get it on the first try. I know when I first learned to drive a manual, I was grinding gears and stalling out all over the place. I didn't think I was ever gonna get the hang of it. And don't even get me started on hills. Talk about a mini heart attack. A little bit of advice there, practice on a flat ground until you get the hang of it. Okay, let's talk about upshifting real quick. When shifting gears, there's an ideal RPM range you should be shooting for, and that can be different on each truck. Starting out, you would be watching the RPM tach to know when to shift, but eventually it will become second nature and you'll probably be able to hear it. There are 4 basic steps when shifting up a gear. 1, all at the same time you will release the accelerator, shift to neutral, and push down on the clutch pedal. 2, release the clutch pedal and let the gears and engine slow to the RPM range you need to switch to the next gear. 3, when the RPMs are where you need them, push in the clutch pedal again, half to 3/4 of the way, and then shift to the next gear. And 4, release the clutch pedal while also pressing down on the accelerator. It's a lot to think about and do at once, but don't worry, our CDL instructors will give you plenty of time behind the wheel to get comfortable with the process. But what about downshifting? Well, downshifting can be used in a few ways. You might just be slowing down for traffic. You may need to slow down before going down a hill or even before going into a curve. Shifting into a lower gear when going down a hill is very important because it slows the overall truck speed without fully relying on the brakes. If you're just jamming on the brakes and riding them all the way down the hill, the brakes can overheat and you will have what's called brake fade. That basically means you have no brakes. Yeah, you don't want to do that. So, just so you don't end up driving down a hill, screaming for your life and realizing, man, I should have listened to Matt. Let's go ahead and talk about the 4 steps to follow when downshifting. First, all at the same time, release the accelerator, press down on the clutch pedal, and shift into neutral. Second, release the clutch pedal and lightly push on the accelerator to match the gear speed to the RPM you need for the lower gear. The reason you are pushing on the accelerator this time is because as you go into a lower gear, the RPMs are going to be higher than the previous gear. To match the RPM and get a smooth shift, you are slightly revving the engine. Does Does that make sense? Good. Third, when the RPMs are where you want them, push the clutch pedal in and switch to the lower gear at the same time. And last, release the clutch pedal while also pressing down on the accelerator. Also, don't forget that every time you press the clutch in, you are only pressing it in half to 3/4 of the way. The last thing we want to talk about is double clutching. Double clutching is basically the process of pressing in the clutch pedal twice between gear shifts. You may have also heard it called floating gears or granny shifting. Either way, this should not be that foreign to you because in the upshifting and downshifting steps that we were just talking about, you may have noticed we were pressing the clutch 2 times. It's not a complicated process, but many new truck drivers are intimidated by it because it can be hard to get smooth shifts. Ultimately, smooth shifting will come with practice. So, the simplest explanation is that you are manually matching your RPMs to your truck's speed. Once the speed and RPM match, you can set the shifter into the gear you want. There are 3 basic steps for double clutching. First, push the clutch pedal down once, half to 3/4 of the way to the floor, and slide it into gear. Second, push the clutch pedal down, half to 3/4 of the way to the floor, and slide it out of gear and into neutral, and release the clutch pedal. Third, while the shifter is in neutral, press down on the clutch pedal again and slide into the next gear. This second push of the clutch pedal between those 2 gears is where the double clutching term comes from. While shifting, you would be removing your foot from the accelerator to make for an easier gear change, putting it into gear quickly, and then putting your foot back down. Like I was saying, it just takes practice, but here are a few tips to help you know you're doing it the right way. Number 1, listen to the engine revs to make sure the RPMs don't drop too low. Number 2, stay off the throttle for a few seconds while changing gears. Number 3, ease out on the clutch and make sure your RPMs are high enough to avoid stalling. Number 4, if you sense resistance, you're doing something wrong. The shifter should slide in and out easily. The key to mastering shifting is practice, practice, practice. And if it comes down to it and you absolutely can't figure it out, you can always get in an automatic truck. The only problem there is you would have a manual restriction on your CDL, which is going to limit the trucks you can drive and the jobs you would qualify for. With that said, I'm confident that our CDL instructors can get you fully trained on a manual. If you have any questions about our CDL training programs, just call, email, or fill out the form below, and we would be happy to help. Well, that's it for this month. I hope you learned something because I know I did. If you ever have questions, give us a shout and we'd be happy to help you out. We'll see you next month before you see us.